is, the compiler is not going to warn you here. Anytime you send a message to obj, as long as that message exists somewhere, the compiler will not warn you. Okay? At runtime, if obj is not a ship or some other object that responds to shoot, it will crash. Question?
So then is ID special in that way?
In what way?
Because it seems like it's a similar case where whatever you've assigned to obj is a pointer to an object, but it may or may not have this method.
Well, so the question is ID special in that way? You mean is ID special in that I can send it any message I want and the compiler won't warn me? Yes, because that's kind of the semantics of ID. ID means a pointer to some object I don't know the class of. So there's no way for the compiler to give you a warning. So it just assumes, okay, somebody responds to shoot, so it might be this one, so I'm not going to warn you. So yeah, ID is special in that way, I guess. That's why we don't want to use ID unadorned like this. If I say obj some method name that doesn't exist, then it will warn me. Okay? So if it can't find that method anywhere, no object that the compiler has ever heard of implements that method, then it'll at least warn you. Because then it's likely you had a syntax error, you mistyped it. Okay? And so the compiler is going to help you there. So let's say I had an NS string star hello. Okay? And I'm going to make it equal to @hello. If I say hello shoot, the compiler is obviously going to warn me and say strings don't respond to shoot. And at compile time, this would crash, or runtime rather, this would crash. Because of course strings don't respond to shoot. Okay, so this is all good. This is the way we want things. What if I did this? Ship star hello ship equals cast. Okay, everyone knows about casting, right? Okay, yeah, all languages have casting pretty much, or well, most languages that you know. Parentheses ship star hello. Okay, this is perfectly legal, and the compiler will not warn me. Okay, so I've now taken a string and put it in a ship star pointer, and the compiler now thinks that that hello ship is a ship, and so it's only going to complain if you do things to it that don't look like ship, even though we know that that is a string. Okay, so casting can be super dangerous, just like in any language casting can be dangerous. It can be dangerous here. But we do cast sometimes, and the times we cast are the same kind of times we use ID, which is protected times. And I'm going to talk about that protection on the next slide. So if we then said hello ship shoot, okay, that would not generate a compiling error because hello ship is a ship star. However, it would crash at runtime because strings don't respond to shoot. Everybody cool? Yeah.
So does it crash when you typecast it or when you call the...
It does not typecast. Okay, the typecasting really doesn't do anything. That is just tricking the compiler. Okay, it's not even executing really any code per se. It's when you send the shoot. It tries to dispatch that shoot to that variable, that hello ship variable. The thing turns out to be a string and it crashes right there. You can also do this, ID hello shoot. Okay, so hello is the NS string star, and I casted it to ID and sent it shoot, and that will suppress all warnings as well, because now I'm sending shoot to an ID, and I just want to show you here that you can cast it right in line. You don't have to create another variable. If you cast it right in line, you fake out the compiler. Now, we don't want to be faking out the compiler. The compiler is our friend. It helps us find bugs, okay, but this all can be done. Okay, mostly I put this up here to see the difference between the compiler catching something and it crashing at runtime. Okay, when it does which. All right, so when would we ever use this ridiculously dangerous thing of ID? Well, someone asked earlier, can I have an NS array that has different kinds of things in it? Some strings, some numbers, something else? Absolutely you can, and there's plenty of times when you absolutely want that. Okay, so it's great for that. Now, other languages like Java let you actually tell the compiler that this array has strings in it. So that the compiler, when you pull objects out, it knows what type they are and it can kind of help you out. Objective-C doesn't have that. So the compiler cannot help you with contents array. Okay, so it's kind of your responsibility. And I'm going to show you how we deal with that. The second one is, remember in the MVC talk, I talked about all this blind structured communication, right? The blind communication. Well, to have blind communication, you got to have pointers to objects of types you don't know. Okay? There's no way that the view can send the target action thing to the controller without knowing the class of the controller, unless the view can have some kind of pointer to a controller that it doesn't know the type of. Okay? And that's big use of ID. However, we need to protect ourselves, and there's two big ways that we protect ourselves against IDs. One is introspection, which I'm going to talk about in the next few slides, which is we can ask an ID at runtime, what class are you, or what methods do you respond to? So that's a great way to protect ourselves. And then another way is called protocols. And protocols is a way, using a little angle brackets after an ID, to say this is an ID, a pointer to some class, I don't know what it is, but it responds to this set of methods that I'm going to define with this little angle bracket thing like UI scroll view delegate. And that's how we do the delegation and data source thing. So we're not going to talk about protocols today because you don't quite need them. We'll probably talk about them next week or the week after. But that's another way we protect ourselves against ID, by having like an ID with the angle brackets is kind of in between pure ID and static typing. It's kind of in the middle, right? Instead of static typing the type, we're just static typing the messages that the thing can respond to. Okay, so it's kind of in the middle in terms of safety. All right? All right, so let's talk about introspection, though. There's a few introspection methods in NSObject. I'm going to talk about 3 of them here: is kind of class, is member of class, and response to selector. So is kind of class and is member of class let you ask an NSObject, or anything that inherits from NSObject, are you of this kind of class? Or is member of class means, are you actually this class? Not this class or something that inherits from it, but actually this actual class. And then response to selector says, does this object that this ID points to, does it respond to a certain method? Okay? So the arguments, unfortunately, to these methods are really kind of wonky. And just you're going to have to take my word for it on these ones, because when I spit out the sentence in a second here that describes what the argument is, I'm going to use the word class 4 times, and it's going to mean 4 different things. Okay? So the argument is kind of class you get by sending the class method class to the class, which will give you a capital C class, which is the argument to the is kind of class method. Okay? So there's this method class. You see it there, NSString class. It's a class method on NSString, returns a capital C class, and that's the thing that's the argument is kind of class. It is always of this form: obj is kind of class, open square bracket, the class you want, class, close square bracket, close square bracket. Okay, so it always looks like this. So just do it. If you didn't understand my 4 class sentence, just do it. Just look like this, okay? Once I see that an object is kind of a class, then I might want to cast it. You see here I'm casting obj to be an NSString star there, because I know at that point it's an NSString star. So it's okay to fool the compiler, or really I'm teaching the compiler a little bit more about what obj is by doing that. I'm not really tricking it. And it's perfectly safe to do that because I know that obj at runtime is that kind of class. Okay, questions about that? Yeah?
What does the instance method class return?
Okay, the question is, what does the instance method class, so I can say, I'm trying to think of an example where we use that, but like a deck, I might say a deck class, for example. That returns essentially the same thing as here, and you probably could say is kind of class, open square bracket, instance method class, but your reader would be pretty darn confused by that. So there's an instance method and a class method. They probably both return the same thing, capital C class, I believe, but we would never do that here, so don't put an instance call there. It's the class method you want. Good question, though. All right, how about the selector one, the method one, rather? Okay, so methods, when we use them in this response to selector thing, we call them selectors. A selector is really kind of an identifier for a method name, because if you have the method shoot, it's the same selector no matter what class you're talking about implementing it. Even if they don't inherit from each other, they're completely unrelated. You might have a gun class that says shoot, and you might have a ship class that says shoot. The selector shoot would be the same. And we get that selector by saying @selector, parentheses, the name of the class, the name of the method. Okay, shoot. And if the method has multiple arguments, we just put the colons in there. So shoot @ colon has one argument, or add card colon @ top colon. We just say that @selector, open parentheses, add card colon @ top colon, close parentheses. Okay, and that gives us this selector, and we say response to selector. And that'll tell us whether the object that we're sending response to selector to responds to that method. Okay, now these selectors, there's actually a type, kind of a type def in Objective-C for these selectors, all caps SEL, kind of like all caps bool, right? It's this type def thing that's added. And you can declare variables that are of type SEL and store things in there. And there are actually other methods besides respond to selector that take a selector. For example, object has perform selector and perform selector with object. Okay? They will perform that method on another object. Now, why would you ever want to do this? Well, you might have some parameterized thing where you're going to do one of 3 different methods depending on something the user chooses. And you can say perform selector and then have 3 variables, SEL variables, 1 for each method, and pass that as the argument you want perform selected. Perform selector with object, that method would have 1 argument. So the selector name better be something colon because it's got 1 argument. And the argument has to be an object. So coordinate here would be some sort of object. Okay? So it's a little limitation. It can only have no arguments or have 1 argument that's an object. You can also do cool things like ask an array, make all the objects in yourself perform this selector. This is a very cool method. And if you get used to using methods like this in array, you'll find your code will shrink down really small because, you know, for ins and things like that you have really zoom down to one-liners. Make objects perform selector, okay, or make objects perform selector with object. So that's an NS array thing. And of course we do target action with selectors. The method, if you wanted to set up target action, not doing control drag, but actually setting up in code, is in UI control actually, which button inherits from, add target colon, action colon, there's some other arguments, but you can see that add target takes an ID, and then it takes an action colon, takes a selector. So that says what message to send to what object, what's the target, what's the action. Everyone understand that? Okay? So this selection stuff, selector stuff is pretty powerful. All right, so let's take a look at how match, the playing card match, might be improved with introspection. So I'm going to go here back to Xcode. And I'm just going to open back up Machismo where we left off here. Okay, that's okay. And then let's go down to playing card. So here's playing card and here's match. Okay, so you all remember match. And here's the line of code that's a little bit of trouble, okay, because this first object here, this returns an ID. So what we could do here, for example, is we could say ID card equals this. Okay, just to be totally clear here. So we got this card. And then I can say if card is kind of class, playing card class, okay, then I'll do all this. Okay. All right, and I'm going to set the other card here to be playing card star card. Okay, so I'm going to cast it. So now the compiler knows about this variable, and from here on out, whenever I touch other card, it knows it's going to be a playing card. And here I've checked at runtime to make sure that it's actually a playing card, so that I'll never crash here. Now, if you say match colon other cards, and the other cards are like some not playing cards, they're regular cards, or they're strings or something, then that's okay. This method's going to work fine because it's going to return 0, a score of 0, which is right, because a playing card wouldn't match a string or any other kind of card. Okay? Make sense? See how we used introspection there? So you will have to use introspection, most likely, in your solution to next week's homework, not the one you're currently working on. By the way, I should take time out to say, if I ever show you something in a lecture after I've assigned something to you, you almost never need it in that week's homework. And I would tell you if that were the case. Okay? You know what I'm saying? So like you got an assignment on Monday, I wouldn't be showing you things today that you needed for the assignment on Monday. I've already shown you everything you need by the time you get an assignment. Okay? Question?
So, yeah. Is introspection used just for elements that are pulled out of arrays?
Okay, so the question is introspection only used like this when you're pulling items out of array? And remember, I told you a couple slides ago, there are 2 major times that we use introspection. One is this, okay? Second one is all that MVC blind communication.